Hi, my name is Prentice, and I am Urban Teachers resident in Baltimore, Maryland. Today we're going to share Oskar and the 8 Blessings, written by Richard and Tanya Simon, illustrated by Mark Siegel. Oskar's mother and father believed in the power of blessings. So did Oskar. Until the night of broken glass. His parents put him on a ship to America. He had nothing but an address and a photo of a woman he didn't know. "It's your Aunt Esther." And his mother's last words to him, "Oskar, even in bad times, people can be good. You have to look for the blessings." Oskar arrived in New York on the 7th day of Hanukkah. It was also Christmas Eve. He knew his Aunt Esther would be lighting the menorah at sunset. To reach her before the sun went down, Oskar would have to walk over 100 blocks on an avenue called Broadway. The city was terribly big. Oskar was terribly small, and Broadway stretched before him like a river. Oskar was already tired, hungry, and cold. His father's last words to him felt very far away. After a few blocks, he looked up to see a woman feeding pigeons. She offered him a piece of a stale roll so he could feed them too. Oskar wanted to feed the birds, but he was too hungry not to swallow the morsel himself. The woman reached inside her coat and gave him a small loaf of bread. It was warm and fresh. It gave him the strength to keep walking. He saw a newsstand full of comics. One showed a strong man in a cape doing amazing things. He stopped bullets. He stopped trains. The newsstand man held out his hand. Oskar didn't have money, so he gave back the comic book. The man called to him. "Keep it, kid. Merry Christmas." Oskar clutched his gift, his Superman, and he heard his father's words. "You have to look for the blessings." Oskar kept walking. He stopped when he heard music coming from a little alley where a big man was humming a jazzy tune. The man whistled to Oskar. Oskar whistled back. They made a tune as fast and light as the snowflakes falling around them. It was Oskar's first conversation in America. At the corner of a park, boys were having a snowball fight. One boy slipped. Oskar leapt and caught him just as the Superman would have done. The boy was laughing, and that made Oskar laugh. But when he looked at Oskar's cold hands, he stopped laughing. He took off his mittens. Oskar put them on and felt the boy's warmth. He had something to give the boy too. A few blocks later, a tall lady in a big coat walked out of a building. A policeman shouted, "Stand aside!" Oskar stopped short. "Oh, Thomas, he's just a child," the lady said to the policeman. "Let him pass." She winked at Oskar. The policeman moved out of Oskar's path. "Yes, Mrs. Roosevelt." "Mrs. Roosevelt." The sun was setting and Oskar began to run. He had to get to Aunt Esther's before she lit the shamash. Running, he stumbled and fell. A hand reached down. and pulled him up. Back on your feet, son. His father was right. People can be good. He turned the corner and ran down the street looking for her house. He ran past a woman humming a nigala. Suddenly, he heard a name. Benjamin? It wasn't his name. It was his father's, and it washed over him. She had a dimpled smile just like his. That's Papa, he said. I am Oskar, whispered Aunt Esther. That's the end of the story. There is an author's note. When I was 10, my grandfather told me the story of 3 rabbis who traveled from our family's village in Lithuania to New York in 1938 to ask him, the eldest son of their Rebbe, to return with them and take his rightful place as the new Rebbe. He politely declined and stayed in Brooklyn and drove a New York City bus the rest of his working life. The rabbis returned home and perished in the Holocaust. I wondered about the 3 rabbis. What if they had stayed in New York? Why didn't they stay? Didn't they know what would happen? Did they know and go back anyway? I wondered about all the people whose lives were extinguished by the Holocaust. As a Jewish boy who had survived it by managing to be born half a generation after it, I imagined all the daring and sly ways I would have escaped the Nazis and how I would have outwitted them all, especially Hitler, who always played the role of the devil in my imagination. Those fantasies were my consolation in the face of a horror I couldn't comprehend, even as I couldn't stop thinking about it. Oskar is the fruit of those fantasies, the idea that what needed to be saved was not just lives, but hope. I grew up on Long Island, close enough to Manhattan to visit, and just far away for each visit to be special. A trip to a land where wonder meets history. New York City for me has always been history itself, a place where you can feel yourself in history just by walking down the street. That's why Oskar escapes the nightmare of the Nazi Germany and finds himself a part of history, not just because of what he lived through, but also because he can now hope to become. In 1938, the year the rabbis came to find my grandfather, the year of Kristallnacht, the year where this story is set, the last night of Hanukkah, was also Christmas Eve. That morning, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, a fixture in the humanist intent in a world seemingly gone mad, left New York City to fly back to Washington, D.C. The night before, Count Basie and a host of other legends performed at Carnegie Hall in a groundbreaking From Spirituals to Swing concert. It was also the year Superman was born. Oskar's particular blessings are blessings that only a major cosmopolitan city can bestow on a refugee. They represent all our potential to survive and thrive in the face of great loss. In the words of Viktor Frankl, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstance, to choose one's own way. Oskar had lost everything, but from his despair, he awakens to his freedom, the choice to see the good in his new world. I like to think that this orientation of optimism is the key to our survival as individuals and as a species. It is how we, as American Jews, have made a place for ourselves beyond the shadow of darkness that tried to destroy us. Richard Simon, New York, 2014.